I didn't really have a particularly pressing cold open for today. Just as we were thinking there, sitting in the kind of waiting room to get going. I don't have anything. I mean, we'll come up with something, but I don't really have anything. And then my phone rang for, I think, the third time today with potential spam. I'm getting a lot of these texts about remote work jobs that if I just text back something, that might be a great deal. I get a lot of texts now, Seth, that are just becoming these like vague, I think, proof of life checks that are just like, hey, how are you doing? Or, hey, still good for our meeting today? These are not just times that I have deleted BJ Kissel's name from my contacts and then I'm just ignoring, follow-ups from him. Is that happening to everybody? Is that happening in Minnesota? What website leaked and sold my phone number? It's been happening a lot.
I did actually see a report that new signups for Tinder are getting a lot more stuff. And so, I mean, is that what's going on to you, or
you think that you started a Tinder account using my phone number?
Nice.
Someone's been giving out my phone number on Tinder. Is that
if I were to describe what makes you special, Josh, it would be you have a mastery of verbal judo that very few do. You're able to just right off, just nothing touches you. You just, it just slides right off you. You're the proverbial rubber glue, and it always ends up sticking to me. Well done. To answer your question sincerely, I have gotten a few more. Mine are more related to like, the realtors are interested in my home.
Oh, those are great. Love those. Thank you.
And
realtors.
Yeah. Yeah. I would personally enjoy keeping my home. Now, unless you can find some way for me to buy a new home and pay the same rate that I'm paying here, interest-wise, you can lock me in. And I'll tell the whole world. We closed in May of 2020, and we had finalized the agreement like a month earlier. We locked in at 325, baby. Woo! You're going to have to burn me out of this house.
You are die in that house.
The Visigoths couldn't get me out of this house. This thing, let me just tell you, the chances of me ever getting a rate like that again, I could buy like $150,000 house right now and pay more than I'm paying for my 7-acre estate. That's right. It's an estate. I mean, it's not, but I like the sound of that better. But that's a smoking rate.
That's crazy. Like, that is the type of thing that I feel like you can tell people to brag, and everyone who knows what you're talking about is like, wow, I'm happy for you. It doesn't come at anybody's expense, right? It's the interest rate. That's fine. You may as well go ahead and like start preparing to have one of the rooms of that house entombed for you. Like, I can't think of any reason whatsoever. If in 15 years, you Keysors, against all odds, eventually do become an empty nest household, there will be no downsizing to a smaller place. You could downsize to a cardboard box for 25% on the interest rate, and it would not make sense for you, Seth. It's great. As long as you don't have a bunch of pregnant dogs running around, you guys are going to live a luscious life.
So far, so good. The only thing that's going to stop me is that inevitable snowbirding that's going to happen one day. Maybe then we'll downsize, but honest to goodness, there's fewer things that let you know you've arrived as an adult than getting really excited about a smoking hot interest rate where you're just like, ooh, that looks good. That's a great looking interest rate.
I'll get on an app for that. Brett Veach talk today. We've got another film review, and Nate Taylor is set to join us at some point in progress of this edition of Only Weird Games. I'm Joshua Brisco with Seth Keysor. Seth, I don't know if you went through the whole 40-minute rundown of Brett Veach's presser. We will go through some of the nuggets of all of that. There were an interesting number of things that I think do make sense to talk about, as opposed to the sort of just annual Brett Veach lying fest that this ends up being. I think there may have been a few truths that slipped through the cracks today, but
he's not doing his job then.
Listen, he's tired. He's doing a lot of pre-draft work here. I think the best thing a GM can do right now is be focused on lying. and maybe he was lying, maybe he was telling some truths. But we'll kick that around more when Nate gets here, or at least after you've had your fill of your chance to talk about a guy we teased on Tuesday that has been out in the Chief from the North newsletter that we've not talked about yet, and that is Derrick Harmon. We are in this defensive tackle space. We did the Walter Nolan film review at some point last week, and now you've taken your second crack here. Here's what I will say on the defensive line front from Brett Veach before we go full into the weeds of the film mode. In the conversation with a bunch of follow-ups from Nate on this that he can break down, and then kind of generally talking about the draft, Veach said that the defensive line class overall, he was describing as good. The defensive end class is where he says there is an inordinate number of prospects. Over and over and over again, defensive end and running back were the two position groups that Veach kept talking about today being deep, having value in some interesting spots, and we'll kind of pinpoint more of those. But knowing we were going to talk about Harmon today, knowing we'd already talked about Nolan, the distinction he was making between interior and outside defensive linemen seem noteworthy. Like, again, if you're taking Brett Veach at face value, maybe there's a second, third round pocket for really good fit defensive end prospects. Did not sound like he was of that mind at tackle, though. So you've taken a look at a couple of the big ones who might be roughly in the Chiefs' range. Let's talk about Derrick Harmon out of Oregon.
I like him. I like him a lot. There's so many places you can start with him, but like, obviously, pass rush is going to be the thing people want to talk about the most, which makes sense. It's the most important thing that you're going to bring to the table. That said, I'm not going to start off with that. He just looks like a dude who should be playing next to Chris Jones. He's listed, I think it's like 6'5", 313. He looks bigger than that on
I'd
film.
take the over, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that dude, because 6'5", 313 usually looks a certain kind of way. He looks more like 6'5", 320, 325. He's a big dude. And I guess I'm going to start off talking about run defense. That was interesting. I'm not sure what just happened to me. I put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
It happens to the best of us, and also you.
Man, verbal judo. Just
I don't know.
And then I found myself flying, head on bottom, butt in the air across the room. That was unfortunate. So
I don't want credit for doing that.
You get flipped when someone throws you, like in a judo throw. You're flipped.
You know who I bet could throw you ass up face down? Derrick Harmon, defensive tackle, Oregon.
Please don't make me laugh at stuff like that.
Where's Nate?
So, golly. I always
Happy Easter,
do that
everybody.
Yes. Happy Easter.
Hey, and happy
420. I'm actually embarrassed. That came out, and I don't embarrass much because I say all kinds of crap, and I don't really. But no, I'm legitimately a little embarrassed how that came out. So, all right, here's the thing. Here's the thing with Derrick Harmon. You don't find, usually when you're looking at interior defensive linemen, you have to make a choice. Do you want a guy who can hold up against double teams, can hold up against combo blocks, which terminology is a goofy thing. Combo blocks is what I've always heard referred to as a block that starts off as a double team, like say like with a guy who's lined up, right across from the center or something like that. But one of them, usually the guard, but sometimes the center, he doesn't stay with the double team. He's climbing to the second level. So it starts off 2-on-1, and then he's climbing to the second level to find work. The idea is you displace the interior defensive lineman, right? Get him out of that running lane. And then you're climbing to the second level to get rid of the linebacker who's coming to that gap, okay? I've always heard them referred to as combo blocks. I've heard other people call them different things. But anyway, double teams and combo blocks, you're usually choosing between a guy who can hold up against that or a guy who you can rely on to get after the passer with some frequency on third down. Even guys that can hold up one-on-one against the run, they usually struggle against double teams. Chris Jones is a good example of this. He's a guy who can hold up one-on-one in the run game very well. He can two-gap if you need him to. He can shoot gaps. He's very, very strong. But if a double team's coming, like, he's not a nose tackle, right? And that's usually what you think of them with that sort of thing is, like your nose tackle, your Vince Wilforks of the world, which is kind of a dying breed. And Vince is not really a fair comparison for anyone because he moved.
That breed went extinct. There was one of them, and his name was Vince Wilfork.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. There was guys that are built like him don't normally move like him. So, but it's that idea of a guy who, your big Mike Pinnells, right? You can send 2 blockers my way. I'm not going anywhere. But what you sacrifice with that is if it is play action or if it's, you can't keep them on the field, obvious passing down, they're not a 3-down guy. On the flip side of that, you get guys that, again, like a Chris Jones, who you got to be careful where you line him up on first down because you might get hit with that combo block or that double team. And Jones is better than most high-level interior pass rushers at holding up because he's just really strong, but he still will get washed right out. Derrick Harmon, I don't know if I saw a double team move him through the 4 or 5 games that I reviewed. I was like, man, that dude just, when he decides he's not going anywhere, and they teach the one knee technique, you get down on one knee. Like if your only job is to hold up the blockers, that different places teach you different ways. But I mean, he just doesn't go anywhere. You can see where his feet are at when he gets engaged and where they're at when the runner moves to the line of scrimmage, and he goes nowhere.
Including in some instances where the odds for that rep were stacked against him, where his momentum was already moving in one of those directions. And
absolutely, he had one of my favorite snaps was one exactly like that. I appreciate you pointing that out, where he was already, I think he was shooting left to right, starting to move in that gap. Then he realized that's the direction they want him to go, and he just planted roots. And he's like, "No, I'm not going anywhere. A firm foundation shall not be easily shaken." One might say. One might call him a cornerstone upon which a run defense can be built. I'm trying to make up for earlier by getting a little more biblical here because that's definitely how it works. You earn it back. That's terrible theology.
Oh boy, yeah, that's the worst theology you've given this whole time. I think
that actually is worse. Yeah.
Listen, the Bible mentions ass way more often than it mentions earning your way back into.
Only in relation to Balaam, Josh. Oh. Anyway,
not my version. I know what David did.
Oh man, yeah, that guy. I know what David did. Verbal judo. Anyway, so the thing with Derrick Harmon though is he also can move well enough to get after the passer. He's got a really good combination of upper body power and lower body power. Now, his upper body power in terms of, hand strength, arm strength, that ability to rip hands free, that ability to throw guys to the side of this stuff. It's not quite as jarring as Walter Nolan. It's not as obvious every single down, but it is still pretty high level. He is able to, I refuse to read that comment. He refuses. See, man, you've got me all kerfuffled today. So he's able to move guys to the side. He's able to, kind of similar to what I talked about with Nolan, to move the shoulders or pads of an opposing offensive lineman to get to half a man and be able to move around him. He doesn't corner as well as Nolan, but he corners better than a dude who's built like him should be able to do. It's impressive. He's also got that sand in his pants to just drive guys backwards. He I'm just going to put my hand in your chest and we're just moving towards the quarterback. Oregon ran a lot of stunts and had him as kind of the setup guy for a lot of stunts. A lot of their stunts were your pretty basic variety where the defensive tackle drives straight up the field to the outside shoulder of the guard, trying to drive that guard up the field and get in the way of the tackle. And then the defensive end loops inside, right? We've seen it a million times. Well, everyone except the Texans offensive line last year. They had literally never seen anyone do that before in their lives. It was so bad.
I'm not going to make a joke about Trey Smith and Juwan Taylor taking notes during this segment. So,
yeah, Juwan Taylor, Trey Smith every now and then. It's like, guys, how are you so good at everything else individually? But as a tandem, you're like, what? They don't have to run straight at me? It's like,
really weird.
No, they don't. You won't believe what these guys are doing. And so, anyway, Harmon was asked to do that, but he was also the looper occasionally, showed the athleticism to do it. And that's what, to me, makes him a really interesting prospect, is that I think it raises his floor as an NFL defensive player, that he can do both. You're not making that same choice that you're making with a lot of other pass rushers. He's able to execute that scheme. He's also able to win one-on-one because he's just a load, man. He's a big dude, and he can move really well. That lower body power he's got is really high level. Normally the type that you only see from guys that are being looked at as straight up nose tackles. So the thing with him, like in terms of like a fit with the Chiefs, that makes him really interesting to me is the idea that you can plug and play him depending on how, look, it's a tough jump on the line to the NFL. Even Chris Jones wasn't dominant as a rookie. He was really good. Like he was really good from Jump Street. Like I remember watching his first preseason snap. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna work. This is what you're gonna see." But he can, in theory, get on the field and be a 3-down guy. He can be on the field, first down, second down, third down. That's what 3 downs mean. I don't know why I felt the need to over-explain that. I'm often repetitive and redundant, but he tends to you can keep him out there. You don't lose anything on either down. And he can do all the things that Spags asks those interior guys to do, as opposed to kind of mixing and matching a little bit. And that's really intriguing to me. So I loved his film overall. I don't think I think his ceiling's high. I think he's got ceiling of a very good interior pass rusher. I don't know if he's got a ceiling of like world devastator pass rusher the way Walter Nolan does. But I think he's got a significantly higher floor as a run defender and even maybe as a pass rusher. Because with Walter Nolan, there's something that I can't quite put my finger on. I really like his film. I already said that last time, but there's something there I can't quite figure out what it is. For whatever reason, I view Harmon as a safer prospect.
I think the thing that jumped out to me on Harmon is I said this right before we started today, but it was like he looks like an NFL football player. Yes. And I think the versatility of it is the main thing motivating that for me. I typically, I think, would rather take the higher ceiling guy given the opportunity to like find a blue chip player. I want to always try to find the blue chip player. And Veach said today they have even fewer first round grades than usual. He said they usually have about 15 to 17 first round grades, and this year they have 12 or 13. Maybe Nolan's one of those. Maybe Harmon's one of those. I would guess probably neither of them are. I know a lot of people have Nolan in that like 15-ish kind of range, but like when you're looking at if there are 13 guys who they have a teardrop off before, maybe neither of these guys are ahead of that teardrop. But the thing that is exciting to me about Harmon is that idea of, hey, year one, you can go not literally all 3 downs. The rotation will always be there, but you can go theoretically all 3 downs, live your life next to Chris Jones, where you can be the run stuffer next to him on early downs, and you can pin your ears back and do the Tershawn Wharton thing on third down. This is like a weird comp, and I don't want to I'm just the 2 guys who have done this, been in this position most recently. But if you say, hey, Derrick Harmon, you are Derek Nottie and Tershawn Wharton. That's our pick at number 31 overall. Derek Nottie was a 2nd round pick. And obviously, I think as injuries kind of crept up on him, he became less effective in that ground hogging role that you're talking about. And he never really developed any particular pass rush juice. But the idea that he can be a useful player, both immediately and in a number of places, is enticing to me. And it's not that, Kingsley could always kick into guard if he flames out at tackle. Like Harmon can just stay on the field whenever the Chiefs need him to, in theory. That's appealing to me.
Absolutely. And it's appealing in the sense that for now and the future, because he's a guy that can play next to Chris Jones now. And depending on what things look like, Jones, I went back and watched a couple games just to see, and maybe I'll have time to write about him this offseason. That dude did not lose a single step last year. And we'll see, what things look like in the future. Because, with defensive linemen, sometimes it's gradual, sometimes it comes at you fast. It's a lot like life, the days are long, but the years are short, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if Jones isn't in town in 3 years, Harmon's a guy that could potentially slide into that role. And in the meantime, play really seamlessly next to him. You wonder about that a little bit more with a guy like Nolan, who has a more specific role, who would be like of Chris Jones kind of replacement type. Could still see the field a ton next to him because there's a lot of obvious passing downs. And Nolan, his upper body power is considerable. So it's not like you would have him on the field as more of a penetrator against the run than a guy that might potentially be facing some of these double teams. And Harmon can do that too, by the way. I wish Oregon would have allowed him to more often. He kind of got pigeonholed occasionally into sitting there two gapping because him and man, they had a load at nose tackle. I don't know who number 90 is. I think it was 90 on Oregon's defense. That dude was enormous. Like I would watch them line up. I'd be like, there's Harmon's big old butt, because that's what you look for with defensive tackles. And then I was like, man, look at the size of the butt next to him. Like, these are actual thoughts that go through your mind when you're gauging offensive and defensive linemen in the NFL. And so I like the idea short-term and long-term. I'm not saying I would take him over Nolan. It would just be a conversation for me.
And you'd be similarly happy with each of them for different reasons?
I think so, yeah. I think I would be similarly happy for different and yet the same, because I don't want to downplay Harmon's ability as a pass rusher. I don't think he was quite as consistent as Nolan, but that's because Nolan was winning one-on-ones constantly. Right. Harmon didn't see a ton on one-on-ones. When he did, he won against them with some frequency. He's not quite as adept at freeing his hands and cornering as Nolan is. So you could see just different things there. But the tools are all there, and he was productive at that in college. Thank you for your prayers, everyone that's heading off to Last Supper Mass. I appreciate you.
This is a real thing that is happening because that's
happening in the comments, by the way, everyone.
Important.
It's just so people don't think that I'm just like randomly. I've got religious Tourette's. I
honestly have kind of always assumed you did. Is that a thing?
Well, out of the overflow of the heart, the
it would explain a lot, would it not?
It actually would explain more than I care to admit. So yeah, but no, I like Harmon, like him a lot. Would be thrilled if they grabbed him.
What is the place that makes you second guess Harmon, even at potentially 31, or if we're talking in that trade up? I will say, I don't know chicken and egg. Well, I know that the KCSN draft guide has been a work in progress and has been out for a while. I don't know if you had read that before you did your film review or vice versa, but you both ended up on one particular drawback of his that is a little bit strange to see for a player with his athletic profile regarding finishing and tackling. I believe Zach Eisen had the head start there in the draft guide. I think he's on defensive tackles, and you both landed on that.
In this, as in many things, Zach has finished ahead of me. It's because of his youthful exuberance.
He's got nothing but burst. I mean, he's got 45 years on you.
Oh, Holly. Yes, another long-standing. Seth is 60.
He's got 25 years on me, man. I don't know. He's a baby.
And Brian LaBarge in the comments, or Brian LaBerge, I don't know. He makes a great point. If Seth was a disciple, he'd be Peter, always rambling. 1,000,000,000%. Peter is easily the most identifiable disciple because he was constantly saying stupid stuff in the face of Jesus. And so actually I take a lot of encouragement from Peter. It's like, oh, you can be kind of an idiot with some things and still really do incredible stuff through God. So there you go.
We hope to be joined by BJ's favorite host, Nate Taylor, shortly.
Ooh, that'll be good. So
not yet. I'm just saying in general, just the favorite host.
Yes, the host whom BJ loved.
There you go.
And Nate would beat me in a race to the tomb as well. So
I don't know, man. You pretty frequently get a much earlier start.
So with Harmon, he doesn't tackle super well.
How does that happen? Why does that happen?
I don't know. So he can there was one particular snap that I don't think I shared because it's always more fun to share the good snaps, but something to keep in mind for those of you who subscribe and read the Teeth of the North newsletter. Clips are demonstrative, not dispositive. I don't show you a clip to prove something exists. I show you because I could create a 3-minute highlight reel of Christian Ponder at quarterback that would make you think that guy was a Hall of Famer. Yeah. These guys are good. They're going to have ups. They're going to have downs. Everyone gets got. you could make a 2-minute highlight reel or low light reel of Patrick Mahomes' bad plays that makes you think he washed out of the league in a year. So they're not meant to be this positive. And not saying I'm proving to you this exists. I'm trying to just show you what I'm talking about. And that's way more fun with good plays than bad plays, and good traits than bad traits. So just because I didn't show a clip of him missing tackles doesn't mean it's not a legitimate issue. I would just say, I don't know. One of my favorite snaps to show that, it was a play where he held up like the Great Wall of China against a combo block and then just bowled away the offensive lineman and then proceeded to just let the running back run right through his arm. And it's like, how are you moving a 300-pound dude with that arm? And then 5 seconds, well, like 1 second later, that same arm lets a 200-pound running back run through it. So I don't know if he's got powerful arms, but not powerful hands. Maybe his grip strength is terrible. I genuinely don't know. But it is something where you'll see him cause pressure, but whiff in the pocket. And that still affects the play, but he doesn't finish as strong as Nolan does. You can kind of almost think of it, the difference between like
Chris
Willie
Jones versus Joe Burrow as opposed to Chris Jones versus anybody else. Is that fair? No.
Well, no, he's been finishing lately on Burrow. No, like one thing, like if I were to, and maybe this will help prove the haters and doubters wrong about how I feel about Nick Bolton. Think about the difference between when like Willie Gay Jr. would arrive at a play
quickly and fast.
Yes, a little too fast. He did get there fast. But like there were times where he would get there, he'd be in position, and a running back would just run through his arms. Now, Gay is a pretty solid tackler, so it's not a perfect analogy, but then the way Nick Bolton generally ends plays when he gets his hands on someone, you can just see the difference there. The play ends there. There's usually not a lot more yardage there. It's something like that. So with Harmon, that is there. That's the thing that gives me pause, or double pause, to quote the comment section right now.
I can't, and I want everybody to know, I hear it. I just can't. If I interrupted Seth every time he had a little double entendre innuendo, the show would never get anywhere, and it already barely gets anywhere.
Am I the Charles Boyle? And you won't get this because you still, despite my repeated requests, haven't watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Am I the Charles Boyle of our podcast? Because he's always doing double entendres on accident.
Well, I mean, that certainly is a point in his favor. I don't know anything else about the character, so that's a really hard hypothetical for me to answer.
Oh no, I was asking the commenters. I really should have clarified that.
Okay, no, we'll just wait until they respond. Go ahead, comment.
I just wanted to bring the podcast.
Let him respond. Let the chat respond. You did it. Congratulations, you've done it once again. For the 456th consecutive show, Seth Keysor has brought Only Weird Games to a screeching halt. Let's take a break.
With the 31st pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select.
Let's go!
Xavier Worthy coming to the Chiefs in round one makes the absolute most sense one could imagine.
As soon as I saw the body type and the way he moves, I'm like, I've seen this too often. Like, I'm just moving away from it. That's why I prefer the guys like Xavier Worthy, because you know they're going to be open.
How can this team navigate the board to walk away with great value at wide receiver and at tackle?
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Are you ready to win some real cash during the basketball playoffs? Well, check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition. And yeah, that includes prize picks. Hit all your picks and score higher minimum payouts on Pick 6. Plus, even more cash if you outscore the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. New players get 50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Another incredible
Nathaniel.
set of work from Tucker and everyone here at KCSN to continue to add new elements to the breaks, the live draft coverage that we're gonna do. You know what? I have not announced anywhere publicly that I will go ahead and reveal right now. Day 2, and God willing, Day 3. I'm gonna be right there with the fellas for the KCSN draft coverage. I will be there at Holiday to make some magic. Friday, emotional support. I'm there to make sure that Kent and Matt's hair and beard look good. Saturday, it's going to get weird. Not as weird as it got right now, though, because Nate Taylor's here. Hey, Nate, welcome back.
Hello. Hi, everyone. It's been a
big day.
It's been a day. Yeah, it's been honestly a crazy 48-hour period, but happy to be here, happy to I'm sure you guys have talked about Veach and everything he said
Very little,
today.
Nate. Very little.
Okay.
Actually.
Look,
we flipped the inverted pyramid here. We've talked a lot about Derrick Harmon, and I mentioned that Brett Veach talked for 40 minutes today.
Yes.
Mentioned a couple things here and there, but you were there for all of it. You had several questions that I thought were really interesting that I thought Veach gave you pretty good answers to.
Thank you.
So yeah, what do people need to know about the Veach presser from today?
Besides that line for a lot of it, we already covered that.
Always look into things with a certain viewpoint of how they're being said, why they're being said, and in what order they're being said in. I find to be fascinating. Look, we've been through this before. I'm always a little I still have scar tissue, Seth, from when he told us certain things and then lied in our faces, and then he traded for Orlando Brown. So that hasn't happened.
I just need people to know that we recorded a great show about the potential tackle draft prospects. There was so much ball talk. Like the people that hate how much we digress enough to leave a mean review on wherever it is that you can do that, which, by the way, leave a nice review wherever it is you do that.
Yeah,
I know a lot about this. I'm very good at it. They would have loved how much ball was talked on that show. Probably the most ball we've ever talked during any show, and it's just gone.
Yeah,
and that's when we decided to never talk ball again.
Never to be heard from again. So at least that didn't happen today.
You know what I could have done before you got in here, Nate, and before I asked you to expand on Brett Veach's press conference? You know what I could have done? I could have talked about the KCSN benefit raffle supporting the All Juice Draft Workshop in memory of Therese Paylor. The info for that's on the screen. It's all over the KCSN socials. I apologize for cutting you off, Nate. Tucker was like, hey, can you do this after the break? And then I got so excited that you were here that I blacked out and I forgot to mention it. But it's an incredible cause, and it can be an incredible way to get some great merch if you're looking to add to your collection. Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey signed merch, and then signed jerseys of Trent McDuffie, Will Shields, Chris Jones, Shamari Connor, Brian Cook. You can get 10 raffle tickets for $50 or 1 for $10. But go 10 for $50. Again, either way is fine, but those are your two ratios there. Go to givebutter.com/KCSN draft or Venmo at KC Sports Network. Again, you can see all of the winnings and also get BJ's side of what KCSN is doing with this money this year with the All Juice Draft Workshop. It's very, very cool and can get you some very, very cool things. So check that out or go to givebutter.com/KCSN draft. My apologies, Nathaniel. That was terribly unprofessional of me.
No worries at all. Look, what Brett Veach said today is that the Chiefs are taking a running back, probably going to take a cornerback, and maybe they're praying to the good Lord that Josh Simmons is available with the 26th pick or the 28th pick or a little after that. The story's already up today in The Athletic. What I wrote, and I think is the biggest takeaway, is that the Chiefs brought in Josh Simmons, the offensive line left tackle prospect from Ohio State, who, if he was not dealing with or rehabbing, I should say, from a season-ending knee injury, he would be a top 10 to 15 pick in this draft easily. But they brought him in because they want to know as much about his rehab, how the knee's holding up, the strength of the knee as of right now, how much you can project. If you're willing to, so much of what Veach talked about was depth and fortifying depth and continue to add depth, obviously having youth around that. But if you're solidifying the left tackle position with Jalen Moore, who you acquired in free agency, could you strengthen the position even more with a guy who perhaps in year 2, year 3 is a young, and in terms of technique and skill set and play style, seems to be the best left tackle prospect you could have gotten over the last 3 years, and he might only be available to you because of the injury history. So I do think, everything we know right now, everything I know right now, I do think that Josh Simmons' pre-draft visit is the most significant day and the most significant details for the team to understand what its actual position and philosophy is moving forward to next week, and whether or not they have done enough due diligence to place a pretty sizable gamble if they go for Simmons based on the long-term projection over a rookie contract, or if they did everything possible. And as we've said before in previous episodes, there are no left tackles available, and even Josh Simmons is gone, and you're ready to pivot to a position that you can improve immediately. There was no Josh Simmons last year, guys. There was no Josh Simmons 2 years ago who was this good on tape. No personality issues, no off the field stuff. It's just, can you get him to be back to his peak level so that you can see whether or not he fits in the NFL? He is probably, for the Chiefs, and I wrote this today, the most intriguing prospect, because the only reason why you would bring him in is off the one shot that he might be available to you, when under no circumstances would he be available past pick 14, 15, 16.
We talked about him quite a bit on Tuesday. I mean, would you move the line now for how likely you think it is that is what the Chiefs' plan is, or plan A, or whatever? I mean, you started saying some numbers that start with a 2 in terms of where they might have to get to take them. That feels like a pretty big pivot in a pretty small period of time.
It's a pivot in this sense, Josh, and I'm glad you referenced it like that, because as I told everybody before free agency, you don't trade Joe Tootie unless you know for sure you're improving left tackle. Now, the initial plan was to get Ronnie Stanley. He never made it to free agency. You went with the player who has no injury history, who you think has the most upside, but has never been given the opportunity to play starting snaps for a full season at left tackle.
Can't believe he couldn't beat out Trent Williams.
And now, if you want to make for certain, because you only bridged yourself for a 2-year sort of stopgap band-aid on a broken collarbone situation, if you want to get as good of value at a premium position with someone who has all the skills and all the traits, I told you guys there's a reason why people are mocking Josh Simmons to the Chiefs. I just don't believe he'll actually be there because there are smart people in the NFL. But this is their long shot. Bringing him in, the prospect also agreeing to visit the Chiefs, which I find to be very interesting, so that you can give an even, more thorough update of the knee injury. All these things sort of matter. So I still think the odds are low, but I do think for Chiefs fans on Thursday night, a week from now, where Josh Simmons goes is pretty much when the draft begins, based on my understanding of the situation and how the Chiefs have tried to maneuver this, and also even Brett Veach's willingness to share publicly. And I find these quotes to be really fascinating, boys. Would you like? I know we don't do this a ton. We probably should do this more. Do you want me to read quotes from Brett Veach, Josh?
Oh, please. I have some paraphrases and a couple words that jumped out to me, but nothing quite so transcribed.
So I asked, hey man, what are the value? What do you learn maybe doing this for 6-7 years now on these pre-draft visits, these late pre-draft visits that matter in terms of moving forward towards the draft? And I appreciate that Brett said this in quote, every opportunity you have to spend with the player, I find it to be valuable. I know there's some teams that don't do visits. I'm just a believer that the more you spend time with the prospect, the more you get to know him. Even if it's a little bit is better than nothing. With players we just brought in, you're going to get additional medical, and I put in parentheses, information. The guys at the combine, you need a recheck, whether it be a knee, a shoulder, an ankle. If we bring those guys in to get an extensive time with our doctors, that's important to us. Guys, they literally did this 5 years ago. Well, I guess 4 years ago. His name was Trey Smith, and it worked out. So
if Josh Simmons is there in the 6th, they should absolutely
take him.
Yeah.
But there's substance to hopefully everything I just sort of tried to explain, and obviously given Brett's quote, there's I believe a lot of honesty within that.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of, who do you draft, right? Like there's so much that goes into it beyond the player themselves. There's the idea of positional value. But positional value, I've been thinking a lot about that this year in relationship to left tackle. Positional value doesn't just mean how valuable the position is during the game. And I think positional scarcity is part of positional value.
Yes.
Right? There's kind of like a supply and demand value issue that goes on. And I've kind of come full circle in how I view left tackle. Because of the way the game is currently played on the field, I don't know that left tackle is any more valuable than right tackle. In fact, I'd argue it might not be on the field. However, it is still, and maybe this will change one day when everything catches up to this, to how the league has changed. Because it used to be right tackle was they got paid way less than left tackle.
Right.
They were way more frequently available, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
That started to even out because, I mean, if you think about one of the final defensive snaps for the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, the last time they won the Super Bowl, Chris Jones is like, I'm going to line up opposite their right tackle. I'm going to beat him because he can't block me. And so many guys line up opposite right tackle these days almost exclusively or are able to do both. And I see Vicky M in the comments. Well, I disagree, Seth. Blindside. I think that that's pretty overstated. The reason being, it's a term that gets used a lot, but depending on how the scheme is set up, your quarterback might just be also starting his reads off to his left. And then with the way peripheral vision works, because you got to remember, yeah, sure, his back is turned there, but his face is turned this way. It's looking straight ahead. And so it's just not that much blinder. If a quarterback is starting off his reads to the left, you know where he's blindest? His right. And so I totally hear you. And that's totally what
blame Sandra Bullock.
But no, I blame Sandra Bullock. So I totally hear where you're coming from on that. I just think it's a little overstated to an extent. Not completely, but to an extent.
What caveat? I think Joe Theismann would tend to disagree.
And I mean, honestly, I think, in that day and age, if we're going to start talking about how valuable, running backs were in the early 90s, we can talk about, the advent of the spread offense.
Yeah.
Being the primary, it just has changed things a little bit now. But let's say, even if it makes it, 2% more important, well, when you're talking about your quarterback, that's a big deal, right? So I agree and disagree with the blindside aspect of it, and it's just enough to make it a little more valuable, right? Just
all right. So this 5-minute tangent ended with Seth saying he both agrees and disagrees with the comment that he responded to. Next.
So the thing that I think about is positional scarcity. What we have seen as Chiefs fans over the last few years since Eric Fisher's unfortunate injury, is how hard it is to get a competent left tackle. Yep. Every offseason, you can get a competent right tackle. Now, maybe not a really good one, but competency at left tackle is just harder to find. And positional scarcity is a way that I have not until this year really thought about positional value. And that's one reason why, like with the Josh Simmons thing, it's just a situation where how often will you have the opportunity to acquire a player with his tape when you're drafted 31? And the correct answer is virtually never. So say with Orlando Brown Jr., even a left tackle of his caliber is generally not going to be available for a back of the first half trade.
Can I help give a little example of this just for people kind of putting that caliber of tackle in their mind?
Yes.
On draft night, Laramie Tunsil had a video of him smoking weed out of a gas mask, and he went 13.
And that was when people viewed that very differently.
It might as well have been crack by the way that got covered.
Right.
He went 13. He went in the lottery.
Yeah. And that's a great way of thinking about that, because it's just there's more positional scarcity. And Nikki in the comments, who said the same thing about blindside, makes a good point. There are fewer good left tackles than right tackles. I think that's true. Yes. So there's got to be a little something to it, but that little something is still treated as a very much big something in terms of positional scarcity. So that's where, with the Simmons, I think you grab him and people are like, well, they grab more. I like more. I like his tape. I think he'll be a competent left tackle, but I think he could be a competent right tackle too. And so now he's the one who knows whether he can play both sides. By the way, not everyone can do that. But it's something worth thinking about in terms of risk reward. And that's one reason I could see them going that direction. If it's a guy, because again, it's Simmons, it's solely injury concern. It's not, and if we can develop him. Right. That's what Kingsley Suamadi, that's a different type of swing. Yes. If we can develop him is a very different swing than injury. But by God, they better be pretty sure or really sure. If they're like, man, we brought him in, we looked at his medicals, we talked to his doctors, and we did a private workout with him, and man, that kid's moving well. Okay.
Then he's going to the Texans.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing that I'm stuck on here is if he gets into all these facilities and he's out there dancing around on his tippy toes, he's going 25, or he might go 18 or 12.
There's a reason why I said 24 now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, someone's going to try to trade in front of the Texans, who, based on their decision-making with offensive line, are like, yeah, but do we really need it? I think we're going to need more proof than C.J. Stroud almost dying in the playoffs. Because what the Eagles did to Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs did a worse version of that.
It was worse.
CJ Stroud.
It was worse.
I felt bad for him. Go back and rewatch the second half, especially when they had to throw the ball. It was every single play. They just could not block them. It was hilarious from that end.
Let's do this since we've talked about Jalen Moore a little bit, and we're going to step back into the free agency section of this because it's also the first time Brett Veach has talked about the free agents the Chiefs have signed since then, right? So I give you, Nate, I give you Jalen Moore, Christian Fulton, Elijah Mitchell. Anything on any of those players jump out in particular?
We talked about with Jalen Moore how they felt like he was going to be a stabilizer for the position, with the chance to maybe improve to being, you know, obviously quality starter at the position. I think, guys, I think we said this before, but again, his name does not have to get mentioned with Elijah Mitchell. But they basically said, "Hey man," or Brett Veach basically said, "Hey man, can you be Jerick McKinnon?"
Brett Veach brought up Jerick McKinnon by name, first name, last name. You didn't have to do that.
Out of nowhere. Yeah, just said, "Hey, you know."
It's really, I think Brett Veach is good at his job, but if he's doing that, I can be a GM, right? It's like,
Yes.
oh, can I get the Niners running back that's kind of quick and shifty and has been hurt a bunch? Yeah, I'll take him again.
I'll take him again. Hey,
Okay,
you
cool.
Hey, we saw one veteran transition from the Shanahan scheme to the Reed scheme, and that went swimmingly. Why don't we just do that again?
Who knew it was so easy?
So that was the big takeaway with Elijah Mitchell is, well, he's fast. He can catch the ball, pretty good in protection. Just got to stay healthy. And
the two first bullet points I had, Nate, were immediate Jerick McKinnon comparison, then quote, he'll have to get through training camp and get through a season healthy, but our trainers like what they saw. Those are the takeaways. He's Jerick McKinnon if he's healthy. Cool, Brett. Easy. Next.
Yeah. And so for Christian Fulton, I see these two things in conflict that Veach said, which is basically like, hey man, I can oh boy, what analogy isn't sexual?
Nate, believe me, that won't be a problem with this particular show. You weren't here earlier. But I actually think we might have hit our limit before the podcast.
Oh boy.
17.
Okay. I can basically
I'm not asking you to, by the way. Just to be clear, this is not me goading you. Like, oh, I bet you can't say something worse than what I said earlier. That is not what I
can.
I cannot wait to re-listen to the first start of this show. So
the words just got away from me.
Derrick Harmon, very powerful.
It happens. So very powerful. Girth. Anyway, it's like Brett Veach was like, I just get any quarter in the third and fourth round, and Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo are gonna make him the star. But also, boys, as soon as Jalen Watson got hurt, we were boo-boo.
He did also mention that Najee Johnson got hurt too, and I don't know.
Which I was like, I'm sorry, when did that occur? That never occurred.
That's one of those things that either never happened and they're lying about now, or that did happen and they were lying on the injury report. But they definitely are lying at some point, actually speaking. We know there are lies here.
I think Brett caught himself because he said, this is just a guess, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Again, Najee Johnson, I'll double check this here in a minute. I believe he was available for every game last season. So how hurt was he? But I think Brett caught himself in the air because he was like, man, once Jalen got hurt, we were boo-boo. And, Najee got hurt too. And I'm like, come on.
That's a good call. It was more about him being like, man, we had nobody except for Najee, who we gave $3.5 million to. Right now, he's currently holding the space. The number could change.
Because the best part is, hey man, y'all had Najee Johnson covering Courtland Sutton with the season on the line for the Denver Broncos. Okay, he was healthy, but so those two things are in conflict. It's like, well, man, we really needed Christian Fulton, but I can just go get a corner right now in the fourth round. He'll be excellent. And I'm like, who says this? That's why Christian Fulton take
the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs, and in many cases, any general. I don't think Veach is a particularly generational BSer. He's just once you start getting the right color of glasses on, you start seeing the matrix. The one other thing I had on, actually two other things for Jalen Moore. One just being that he used the word stability twice when talking about left tackle, but it was about stability, and then more consistent play on the left side. So stability and consistency were the buzzwords.
Yep.
It did really sound like, though, a player that he was not asked about in this, but certainly is connected to all of this. He mentioned the Joe Tooney trade and Kingsley's start at guard in Denver. Like, he's your starting left guard. Like, that's just the vibe of that has been the case the entire time. But he did not catch himself and say, we saw Kingsley at guard, and so we're going to have a free-for-all battle royale for the spot. He mentioned Kingsley at guard like it was sort of sufficient for that job. I think we've been expecting that.
Yes.
And, look, again, if Hunter Norzad beats him out in training camp, it's good for Hunter Norzad and really bad for Kingsley. But that was the other thing that I was kind of listening for Kingsley's name. And It didn't come up very often, but it did there.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember this too. They are aware that only one of these guys right now is on a rookie contract on the offensive line, which again goes to the scarcity that Seth mentioned earlier in terms of the supply and demand. So it better work out with Kingsley Suamataia based on the way the roster is constructed right now.
Go ahead. They would need Norzad to, if there's a situation, say, where Norzad beats him out. I like Norzad's film. His preseason film, not as much. But then later on in the season, when he got a chance, he looked a lot more functionally strong. It was rough in preseason. But the only scenario where it's not a catastrophe for the Chiefs, and this happens sometimes, is if Kingsley loses out to Norzad, not because Kingsley plays bad, but Norzad plays well. And so you can even it out that way. Like you can get away with whiffing completely on second round picks if you nail 6th round pick or whatever he was at the same position. But it still is like, well, dang, that opportunity cost is heavy.
And they just pivoted so fast on the Kingsley thing. Like, again, his name also never came up in any tackle conversations, which we thought was going to be the case. But now you've got the general manager of the team telling you that less than 365 days ago, this guy was the left tackle of the future. 360 some days later, he is hopefully our starting left guard. That sucks and matters in the mix of all of this. A couple general draft things he mentioned, Nate. You can just tell me if any of these jump out to you. Seth, obviously, you two, you weren't there live, but if you hear anything, wait a second, you're also allowed to grab the talking stick. He talked about the depth and the numbers at O-line, D-line, and corner. We talked about earlier that he really emphasized that defensive end is the strongest spot on the D-line. He went D-line and running back over and over as the deepest groups there. 12 or 13 first-round grades. Usually they're in the 15 to 17 range. He mentioned Juwan Taylor being near the end of his deal a couple of times. Once he did it, and then the stream froze. Curious. And then he mentioned it again later, and the stream did not freeze. 202 players on the big board. Shout out Nick Jacobs for getting that every year. It's been 185 to 210 previously, so maybe on the slightly higher end in terms of who they see as draftable players. And then he talked about positional value a little bit, asked about the present and future of it all, said you're always going to stick to value on the board, but within that value, you're going to stick to the premium positions. O-line, D-line, almost always deferring to that. Jalen Moore 2-year deal, Taylor near the end. That Seth ended up talking about some of those things anyway that I wanted to highlight from Veach, which is, again, best player available doesn't work if the best player available is a punter. And we all understand that. But if the best player available is a natural right guard, but there is a really good player who is a defensive end who's not the best player on your board, but maybe he's the second, you should take the defensive end. Like, that's just sort of it was interesting to hear Veach talk about that. He has a few things that I think he has expounded on in different ways over the years. And I don't want to just say he's maturing and getting more patient, because that's a little, I'm younger than he
what
is.
What a crock of bleep.
No, and I don't think he's a baby, like learning the levers back there. But I think it's interesting to see his evolution as a general manager through some of that.
He has tried really hard to be disciplined on draft night. That's all I can say, guys.
Yeah.
Mike Bergonzi got paid a lot of money to make sure Brett Veach stopped calling people. Okay.
If Clark Hunt or anyone in the Chiefs organization is listening to this right now, I will take a very reasonable sum of money in a freelance position if necessary.
Right.
To be that guy for you this year. I'll come sit in the war room just Thursday. I gotta be with KCSN Friday, Saturday. You don't need me then though. Let me in there on Thursday, and I'm just gonna sit next to Brett Veach, and then just whenever he reaches for his phone, I'm just gonna take it. That's all. Throw it in a pool or something.
Remember Sean McVay when he was a hot young thing and he had the hold me back assistant on the sideline?
Yes.
That's you.
That's me trying to keep Veach from trading up any higher than 25.
Right.
I had a county attorney once tell me that there's a really valuable thing to always ask yourself anytime you're about to undertake any action as a prosecutor or in law enforcement or social service or anything, is to say, but what if we don't? And then just really think, well, what if you didn't do that? Would it be okay? If so, don't do that. There's a really nice flow chart that comes like, I can just see Brett sitting there. It's like, oh man, we're at about pick 20 right now. I could really just pick up that phone and really call someone and really just kind of trade up and get Derrick Harmon. Like, hang on.
What if need a third round pick?
Yeah. I got a couple of those third round picks.
Yes, Brett, and one of those you're going to use on a running back. And if we trade that pick away now, we're not going to have a running back later in the year.
There you go.
That's my job. I can do that. And if that tone is bad, I'll work on a different tone. I can workshop it. I got some time.
Shout out to Jesse Newell who has to ask the question that has to come up every year. Hey man, when you gonna trade down? Never.
He said there was 1 year they had multiple calls about trading down. I believe Nate's looking over his glasses. Nate, I believe that Brett Veach answered the phone 2 times and that they were like, do you want to move down? I believe that much of the story, and then he hung up.
Well, I think what he's referencing is there was one time when he said, it's a pretty good deal. Oh, I'm sorry, Clark's where? He's at Union.
He's currently holding all the Lombardi trophies in his arm, like that meme of the guy with all the limes falling out.
Yeah, call so back. Yeah, it's just not gonna work out this time.
Nate, if you are able to report with any clarity that they could have traded down from that pick and didn't, they had an offer on the table and didn't do it because Clark Hunt.
Yes.
Okay, Nate is reporting.
Okay, let's stop. All right, let's stop, kids. Aggregate me, I guess, but
no, don't give anyone permission to aggregate you ever.
I said I guess, but come on, guys. This is now when I was at the owners' meetings, I had great restraint and asked about more important issues with Clark Hunt rather than that one time when he vetoed a trade down. Okay, while holding the trophy. All right, it happens. It's okay. It's okay. It was
the trophies would have been there on Friday, Clark. I guess he might not have, but the trophies would have been
with the trophy in his hand while the fireworks are shooting. No, look, man, we're all human. It happens.
Could have done fireworks at 35 or whatever.
It happens. Sometimes
it's never happened to me.
Sometimes as the guy running a multi-billion-dollar organization, you just have to do the thing that's worse for the organization, but really makes you feel good.
Well, Seth, actually, there is a lot of evidence to support that. Now that you say it that way,
this is where people need to understand. There is more going than they won the Super Bowl. This is where people really do need to understand. Organizations and government, for that matter, are made up of people. Ultimately, any decision that you see get made in any level of anything ultimately comes down to usually one person, sometimes a few more, making a call.
Do you think that Brett Veach has made an attempt to try to have Clark Hunt do one of those 10-minute space flights while the Chiefs are on the clock this year? Clark, it'd be really cool. You could get to go and experience anti-gravity.
Hey, they're already in Texas.
Yeah.
I have.
Can you do that from Green Bay, Wisconsin? He's not going to be there. I'll be in the war room.
I was saying a bunch of really judgy things about what a big deal some of the people that went up made about returning to Earth, kissing the ground, that kind of stuff after you're gone for 11 minutes. And Jazz actually brought me around to an entirely different point of view where she was like, yeah, but think of how it feels just being on a plane. Mm-hmm. Imagine going so much higher.
They
might have really felt like, holy crap. and realize that we really are just
small,
clinging to this floating rock because of an invisible power. And maybe that becomes much more apparent when you're in there. So I've actually decided I'm pro 11-minute space flight.
I think that's just because Jazz has a really skewed view of what 11 minutes means.
Verbal jujitsu or judo. I don't even remember anymore. Face down and whatever else is occurring.